The A-League in Australia was once a flourishing competition, but now it is financially struggling. The English Premier League, on the other hand, keeps on going from strength to strength as the richest league in the world. So I wanted to find out what exactly would happen if the clubs in these leagues were in the opposite leagues. I swapped out all of the clubs in the A-League with the 12 biggest clubs in the Premier League, and well, it's a lot of madness. I've got a goal of reaching 20 likes in YouTube for this video. Please consider subscribing to the channel to see future fun experiments just like this, and leave a comment down below for any other countries you'd like to see in the Premier League. But for now, let's dive into it. So these are those 12 teams that have moved over from the English Premier League to the A-League. Arsenal, Aston Villa, Brighton, Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Liverpool, Man United, Man City, Newcastle, Tottenham, West Ham, and of course Wolves. So these are actually the 12 most reputable clubs in the Premier League in FM24 at the start of the game. So that is why they have been chosen to move over to the A-League. Now I did this at the start of the A-League season. So if we go into the Premier League and it loads up, you can see there have been a few games that have been played so far. And Sheffield United, Fulham and Burnley doing well. Macarthur FC are the highest placed A-League team so far. But will that hold true when we come to the end of the first season? Let's find out. Okay, we are one season into the Australian clubs being in the Premier League, and let's see how they went. And it's Burnley who have won the league. That is amazing. So Burnley, Nottingham Forest, Brentford, Fulham getting themselves into Champions League places, with Everton, Bournemouth and Luton Town making up the rest of the European spots. We can see Newcastle, Western United and Brisbane are going down. I'm very surprised to see Perth Glory not going down, to be honest. And it appears that, do we have any of the teams? No, we don't. So the top 8 are all English Premier League teams. The next 12, with a gap of 14 points there, are all Australian teams. So let's go to the A-League now to see what has happened there. Grand final, Arsenal have beaten Man City to win the A-League. Let's go through into the semis. So Arsenal beat Man United, Man City beat Liverpool. And the elimination final, Man United beat Chelsea on penalties, and Man City beat Crystal Palace 3-0. Looking at the league table, West Ham, Brighton, Wolves all struggling. Newcastle, with all their money, getting 29 points, which is a pretty awful effort. Man City only coming in 3rd place again, despite all their money. It's well clear of Man United in 4th place. But it is Liverpool who ran away with the regular season trophy. But Arsenal are the winners overall of the Golden Toilet Bowl. Okay, so now let's go over to season 2 to see what happens there. Second season in now. Let's have a look at what has happened in the Premier League. So this season we've got Burnley dropping away into 6th place, but still making those European places. Nottingham Forest running away with the trophy, 10 points clear. Fulham, Brentford and Everton making up the other Champions League spots, with Leeds United and Bournemouth joining Burnley in the rest of the European competitions. Leicester City have come up with Southampton, so Leeds, Leicester and Southampton going straight back up. And as we can see here, Adelaide, Central Coast Mariners and Melbourne City are going down. So Melbourne City, obviously part of the City Group, who own Manchester City as well, and New York City and various other clubs around the world, they are going down into the 2nd tier of English football. Now let's have a look and see what's happened in the Sky Bet Championship. And all 3 teams are not only in the relegation places, but they are way off Peterborough United. That is extraordinary how far they have fallen. Checking to see what happened in the Champions League with those clubs going into it, who obviously weren't anywhere near as good as the clubs that would have otherwise been in the Champions League from England. And we have got Burnley doing a decent effort. 4 wins from their 8 games. Decent win of 4-0 over Maccabi Tel Aviv at home. 3 losses to Leipzig, Juventus and Sevilla. Nottingham Forest also with 4 wins, all with clean sheets there. And 3 losses to Roma, Villarreal and Bayern Munich. Fulham get themselves into the knockout rounds as well. Anyone missing? Do we miss anyone? No, Brentford there. There we go, right under Nottingham Forest. 3 wins, 3 draws, and 2 losses for Brentford. So we go into the knockout playoffs where all of them are. Brentford getting knocked out by Roma. Burnley getting knocked out on penalties to Bayer Leverkusen. So that's a really good effort from Burnley. Unfortunately, they weren't able to get the job done. They didn't really use the money that would have come in for them. In fact, they've barely used it at all. James McAtee, Lewis Dunk, and Mike Tresor. So that's not really money that well spent by Burnley. The Nottingham Forest getting themselves into the next round with a win over Red Star. And in fact, they are the only team, as Fulham were knocked out by Porto. Into the round of 16, and we see the last remaining English side knocked out by Atletico Madrid, and none of them progressing into the quarterfinals. We go into the Europa League and the league phase. Let's have a look to see if we have the English clubs. So Bournemouth finishing 14th with Everton just behind them, and I think they would have been the only two in the knockout rounds. Bournemouth and Everton both going through with wins against Trabzonspor and Basel respectively. Into the round of 16, Everton progressing with a win over Sporting. That's actually a really good win. Sporting have a fantastic team and is one you should definitely consider rating. They are quite a selling club. They produce some really fantastic footballers and bring quite a few over from South America as well. And they are definitely a club you should have a look for to try and get some really good players progressing through and use some really good young players as well. Bournemouth, unfortunately, getting knocked out by Benfica. Again, another club similar. Quarterfinals, and Everton going through, beating Athletic Bilbao. So Everton get into the semi-final, and they are knocked out 1-0 on aggregate to Benfica. Wow, that's a very boring two-legged tie, that one. Checking out the Conference League, and Luton Town got themselves into 9th place in the Conference League. They managed to do anything? Yes, they beat Aberdeen to go through 5-1 on aggregate. That's a very handy win for them. Before they then lose to Montpellier and are knocked out in the round of 16 and not progressing through to the quarterfinals. 3 seasons in now, and let's have a look at the landscape of English football. And this time it is Bournemouth that are getting themselves a championship, with Burnley in 2nd place. Everton and Brentford make up the Champions League places, and Norwich, Southampton and Luton getting themselves into the other European competitions. See, Perth Glory, Macarthur and Sydney FC are the ones that are going down. So Western Sydney Wanderers, Melbourne Victory and Wellington Phoenix are all surviving. Let's just have a look at their wins. They are getting some wins against English teams, but they are at home. In fact, they've got one away win, that was against Everton. So looking at the championship now, and unfortunately Adelaide and Melbourne City are going straight down into League One after their relegation last season from the Premier League. But Central Coast Mariners are staying up with quite a decent total, to be honest. 52 points. That's going to keep you up every single year, I would imagine. And Peterborough United are the ones that are splitting Adelaide and Melbourne City in the relegation places. See, Ipswich, Hull and Millwall are going up into the Premier League. So interesting to see Millwall up in the top flight of English football. Checking League One now. And let's see, well, Western United have just survived. Well, not necessarily just survived. They've made it by 7 points. Where are the other two? Brisbane and Newcastle are in mid-table. An awful end to the season from Brisbane. 4 losses and a draw, but they are in mid-table in League One. Let's have a look at the Champions League, and Bayern Munich are getting themselves a Champions League trophy. How did our English teams fare, however? Got Fulham making themselves into the playoff round. Everton doing the same. Brentford and Nottingham Forest are both being knocked out. That's not looking good for the coefficients for England, unfortunately. If they're not getting teams into the latter stages of the Champions League, their coefficient is going to really struggle. So Everton, in fact, getting knocked out in that playoff round, and so too were Fulham, getting knocked out to Galatasaray. Into the Europa League now, and Leeds United have done England a solid by getting some decent coefficient points, making it to the final, but losing 2-1 in extra time to Borussia Dortmund, who have a fantastic side and probably a bit too good to be playing in the Europa League, to be honest. So Leeds actually took the lead early on, and it took a 98th minute winner in extra time for Borussia Dortmund to get the job done. Checking out the Conference League, and Bournemouth have done it. They have lifted the Conference League. Fantastic effort. A 3-1 win in the final against Bologna. Sinistera, Solanke and Traore getting them goals, with only one by Castro for Bologna. Let's have a look at the A-League and see how that's gone. And again, it is another comfortable win for Arsenal. We're not going to go into too much detail in the A-League now, because this kind of gets a little bit boring when there's only the one league and there's no relegations and promotions to deal with. There's no real European or Asian competition as it would be for them. Unfortunately, if you want to get them into the Asian competitions, it takes a hell of a lot of back-end work, and I just don't quite have that kind of time. But for now, we will go on to season number 4. So this will be the last year of our year-by-year update. This could be the last year that we see a team from the A-League in the Premier League. And in fact, that's not going to be the case, because both Western Sydney Wanderers and Melbourne Victory have managed to survive. That is wonderful news. And as we can see, we've got 5 teams from England in the Champions League. So the coefficients are doing really well, or someone else may have won the Europa League, one way or the other. But it is really good to see Western Sydney Wanderers and Melbourne Victory staying in the league. Unfortunately, Wellington Phoenix were very much last place and 17 points off survival, plus a hell of a lot of goal difference. Checking out the championship now, and Perth Glory have won the championship. They are going straight back up into the Premier League. That is an incredible effort from them. 85 points in the championship. As you can see down here, Sydney FC managing to survive another season in the championship, but it's goodbye to Central Coast Mariners and MacArthur, who both go down into League One. Checking out League One now, and we can see Newcastle Jets got themselves into the playoff spots, but they could not make it back up into the championship. That is unfortunate for them. Brisbane Roar, Melbourne City and Adelaide United are staying in League One, but Western United are going down, and they will be going into League Two. And you know, this could be getting bad for them. They could be heading down to some pretty low depths of English football soon, I imagine. Okay, we're going to jump forward quite a few seasons now. We're going to go up to season 10 just to see what the landscape of English football looks like after 10 seasons of this experiment. 10 seasons in, let's have a look at the Premier League. Nottingham Forest winning the Premier League, with Burnley, Brentford and Leeds United making up the Champions League spots. Everton, Luton and Ipswich Town making themselves into Europe, and it looks like Ipswich have probably won the FA Cup by the look of that. There are no A-League teams in the Premier League anymore. Unfortunately, it looks like they might be headed down the league structure. So checking out the championship, and unfortunately Sydney FC actually lost the final of the playoffs. They didn't make it back into the Premier League. Brisbane and Melbourne joined them in the playoffs, but it is Bristol City who are taking that final spot to get themselves back up into the Premier League. MacArthur and Western Sydney Wanderers are mid-table in the championships. That's really good to see. Perth Glory have just survived, so let's check out their competitions, because they got themselves back into the Premier League before. They ended up coming 19th, and they have just been in the championship ever since. We see, unfortunately, Melbourne City are now going down. And have a look at this. In the playoffs of League One, Adelaide United have beaten Newcastle United Jets 1-0 to make it back into the championship. So the Australian teams are really finding their level, I think, around that League One to Championship level. Western United are mid-table League One, so they've actually come back up into League One. They, of course, went down into League Two for a little while. Central Coast Mariners and Wellington Phoenix are there in the lower table. Let's have a look at the past winners of the Premier League now. As we can see, Bournemouth have done really well. They've got themselves 4 Premier League titles. Burnley have added another one. Everton have got themselves 2 titles, and Nottingham Forest 2 as well. Checking out the Champions League, and it has been dominated by those rich clubs on the continent of Real Madrid, PSG, and Bayern Munich getting themselves one, and of course Barcelona had that one that we saw right at the start. So for PSG, as you can see here, all they needed was for those top tier English teams to go away and they could finally win themselves some Champions League trophies. They are not doing it in real life by the looks of things. Checking out the league phase to see how the English teams did, and again, they're not really troubling the top end of the table. We can see Everton in 15th place, Burnley in 18th place, Luton and Brentford in 21st and 22nd respectively. Do we have any others? Nope, that is all the teams by the looks of things. Checking out the playoff round, Brentford going through the playoff round. Everton actually beat Luton Town, so that's a bit unfortunate that they had to play each other. And Burnley losing to Nice. In the rounds of 16, we see Everton getting thumped 6-2 by Bayern Munich, and Brentford losing to Bayer Leverkusen as well. So the coefficient probably not doing too well for them. Into the Europa League, and Bournemouth have actually lost in the Europa League final. So a fantastic effort for them, but they had to come up against a really tough side in Juventus. They beat Southampton in this semi-final as well. And checking out the Conference League, no English teams in the final. And we see Stoke City getting themselves into the semi-final before losing to Monaco, 3-2 on aggregate. Okay, we're going to progress 5 more seasons ahead to see season 15 to see how these teams are doing. Let's have a look after season 15 to see what's happening in the Premier League. And we have Southampton as the winners of the Premier League. Burnley, Everton and Brentford coming into the Champions League spots. Nottingham Forest, Leeds and Sheffield United, obviously I imagine must be winning the League Cup there. They are getting themselves into those other European competitions. Checking out the table, we see Melbourne Victory have got themselves back up into the Premier League. So a wonderful effort from them. Let's check out their competitions to see how their run has gone. So they've actually been promoted twice in recent years to the Premier League. The one year that they did spend in the Premier League, they came 19th place, then won the championship again, and now they have been in 14th place 2 years in a row in the Premier League. Wow, Melbourne Victory won an FA Cup in 2029 and then went on to win the Community Shield that year as well. That is wonderful. Can we see if there have been any other winners? Not by the looks of things. Melbourne Victory are the only Australian team to make it into the final. This is one of the byproducts of this. Have a look at all these teams winning the FA Cup. This is just wonderful to see. You get rid of those top 12 teams, probably mainly you get rid of the top 6 teams, and now there's more of a chance for these teams winning the FA Cup. In fact, we'll have a look at the League Cup as well. And again, just a really nice spread of teams. No Australian teams getting themselves into the League Cup final, but a good spread of teams from all different parts of England get themselves a trophy and also getting themselves a day out at Wembley, coming runners up. Checking the league table of the Championship, Brisbane have got themselves promoted into the Premier League. That is wonderful to see. Perth Glory just missed out on the playoffs after a wonderful last 5 games by the looks of things, 4 wins and a draw to almost snatch a 6th spot, but they couldn't quite do it. Macarthur and Sydney are mid-table in the Championship. We see Adelaide United in the lower to mid-table of the Championship, and unfortunately Newcastle United Jets are very much last and 18 spots plus a lot of goal difference off getting themselves safe. In League One, we have Melbourne City not quite making it into the playoffs with Central Coast Mariners in mid-table. And as you can see, Melbourne City unfortunately went into administration. So if we add those 12 points on, they would have got automatic promotion back into the Championship. That is unfortunate. Western Sydney Wanderers here are mid-table. And if we go into League 2, we can see Western United are mid-table in League 2 and not really doing too well. Wellington Phoenix are really struggling now. They are lower table in League 2 and threatening relegation from the Football League. We don't have any of the Australian teams in the National League, but if you've seen my Yeovil Town video, it is fantastic to see them coming back up into the Football League in this save. You can check that out on my channel as well. That is a wonderful journey, taking Yeovil Town from the National League finally to Premier League and Champions League winners just by changing the reputation at the start and then doing a few other things along the way. Okay, we're now going to go to our final season. It is going to be season number 20 to see how things are faring for all of our Australian teams. Here we go, our final season of the simulation. We go to the Premier League and we can see Everton running away with the Premier League title, 17 points ahead of Bournemouth. And apart from that, as you can see here, the points totals are actually a fair bit lower than what you'd expect in the Premier League. So I think this has really evened up the league for the most part. Everton, I imagine they have moved into their new stadium, and quite often you see in Football Manager, once they go into their new stadium, Everton actually tend to be a really, really good team in this. We can see Melbourne Victory are mid-table in the Premier League, and in fact we'll have a look at their history to see how they have done. And they've been mid-table since we last saw them, essentially. They've threatened European places, but they've basically been mid-table the entire time since the last time we saw them. No other Australian teams currently in the Premier League, but it is good to see a real mix of teams that are in there now. But we needed to just wait one more season because Brisbane have made it back up into the Premier League. What a fantastic effort that is. Winning the playoffs to get themselves up there. And in fact, they're a little bit of a yo-yo club. After coming back from League One into the Championship, they then spent 2 seasons in the Championship before getting themselves promoted, went back down, a couple more seasons in the Championship, went to the Premier League and went down again, and then they have got themselves promoted back into the Premier League. Adelaide United are mid-table along with Perth Glory in the Championship. You can see Sydney FC struggling to avoid relegation, but they still managed to survive in the Championship, but Macarthur are not quite as lucky. So that's half of the Australian teams. Let's see if we can find where the other half of the Australian teams are. So we're checking out League One. Let's see if we can find any of the other Australian teams. I can see one team that I quite like. Yeovil Town are in mid-table in League One. Fantastic to see. We've got Central Coast Mariners just surviving, but unfortunately, Melbourne City are going down. They are into League Two. A pretty horrible year, 12 points and a lot of goal difference off survival for them. Checking out League 2 now, West Brom are in League 2, but they managed to get themselves up into League 1, so good on them. They probably should be doing quite a fair bit better. We've got Newcastle United Jets in there, and Western Sydney Wanderers are also in League 2, but they have just got themselves relegated into the National League. Okay, checking out to see whether we can find those final 2 teams, and we do. It is Western United in mid-table in the National League, and Wellington Phoenix are relegated from the National League with one of the worst totals I have ever seen. 17 points in a 46 game season, and yet they were still 6 points better than Bishop Stortford. So they are gone. I've only loaded this from the National League upwards, so they are now going to be going down into the National League. I imagine South. Wonder how that would actually happen in the game. I imagine they will try and make them into the South. We won't be able to find out, but they are gone, unfortunately. So if we go back into the Premier League and we'll have a look at the past winners. So Everton have won their last couple. Burnley got themselves another one. Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest are also winners in recent times. Interesting to see a club like Leicester, a massive club obviously, and considering the clubs that are gone, they are probably one of the biggest clubs left over, despite obviously not being in the Premier League at the moment. They've only got themselves into a 3rd place position once, and they haven't managed to trouble 1st or 2nd place yet. Having a look at the Champions League winners, and we don't see any English teams in the winners column. However, in 2036, Bournemouth made it into the final that was played in Ukraine against Real Madrid, and it appears Real Madrid have won quite a few. In fact, they've won 9 so far of the 20 on offer, but Atletico Madrid are the current winners with a win against Inter. And they did that in Barcelona. That is amazing. Checking out the Europa League, and that team we just talked about, Leicester City, they've actually just won themselves a Europa League to get themselves into the Champions League. They were runners-up last year. Fulham have got themselves one. Nottingham Forest, Luton Town, and in fact Leicester had one previously as well. Everton got themselves 2. Luton have 2 Europa League wins in this simulation. That is wonderful to see. But Bournemouth, 2 losses in finals in the Europa League. And finally, we check out the Conference League, and we see Nottingham Forest are the most recent winners of the Conference League, getting Girardin and Renan Augusto as leading goal scorers right there. Leeds United managed to get themselves one. Luton have won a Conference League as well. So 3 European titles in all for Luton in this save. That is just fantastic. We see Southampton, Fulham and Leeds getting trophies in the Conference League and Bournemouth getting the Conference League. We saw that one early on in the simulation. The last thing I want to do is just have a look at the A-League to see what has happened. And Wolves are the most recent winners, but that was 3 years ago. And in fact, there was a 3-year gap there, and a 3-year gap there, and a 3-year gap there. So either something has happened in the database with this simulation, or probably more likely the A-League just had financial difficulties and just shut down for a few years because they couldn't afford to pay their players. That's probably what happened. We'll go with that one. If you like what you've seen today, please make sure you like the video, subscribe for future FM content, and leave me a comment down below if there's any other leagues you would like me to swap with the Premier League. But the most important thing, you make sure you have yourself a wonderful day.